Welcome back to another video, and today we got our week 1 preseason top 25 college football rankings. We're going to go through all 25 teams, break down their schedules, maybe throw in a little bit of a record prediction, ceilings and floors. It's going to be a long episode here because we have a lot to talk about. It's our first college football video of this season. I'm very excited. Real quick before we get started, make sure you subscribe, like this video. If you are new, we do college football top 25 rankings every single week, typically on Tuesdays. That's when this video is coming out. And for the foreseeable future, that is when all these top 25 rankings videos will be coming out. We won't have one next week just because it's week 0. So the only, spoiler alert, the only team in my top 25 that plays next week, or this coming week, I guess, is USC. So we won't have one next week, but after next week, week 2, week 3, it'll be weekly top 25 rankings videos. But that's enough talking. Let's go ahead and jump in to our number 25 team. I have Oklahoma State here. Coming in, you look at the schedule, it's pretty workable. Now, having Oregon in the non-conference, that's not going to be easy. That probably will be a loss. But this seems like a pretty decent schedule, all things considered. They are in the Big 12, so it'll be a little bit lighter. They do get Texas Tech at home, which is very nice. They avoid BYU. At Houston could be tricky. At Iowa State, at Kansas State, that could be tricky. But I think roster-wise, you're looking at a 7-5, 8-4, maybe 9-3 team when it's all said and done. The ceiling for this team is probably 10-2, honestly, and I think there's a chance they could get there. Last season, North Texas was 12-2, and obviously they bring over a whole lot of that team with Mike Gundy leaving Oklahoma State. They had a really rough season last year, but they bring over Drew Mestamaker, who led the nation in passing yards last season. They bring over Wyatt Young. They have Caleb Hawkins, who's one of the top running backs in the entire country. Those three guys offensively, I think this offense is going to be very fun to watch. I think this team itself is going to be very fun to watch. It's essentially North Texas from last season, and they were a great team. Like I said, 12-2 last year they finished, and they finished ranked inside the top 25. I think it's very fair to have Oklahoma State, who is essentially North Texas but with more talent just because of now being in the Big 12. Yes, it'll be a harder schedule, but it's not like this is it's not like this is a Big 10 or an SEC schedule. I mean, the Big 12, I feel like this is very workable, and with another year with these guys, they're going to have more chemistry. I think they'll be better, and I really am a fan of Drew Mestamaker. I think he's going to be very good in this season, I think NFL-wise as well. So I like Oklahoma State here as a little sprinkle in the top 25. For me, they're coming in at number 25. Number 24 is going to be Tennessee. I have a lot of question marks about Tennessee, but I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, Josh Heupel's teams are always pretty decent. I think there's a good chance they finish unranked. There's a good chance that they finish, kind of near the bottom, but I don't see this team really contending in the SEC when you have teams at the top like Texas, like Georgia, even Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, this SEC conference. Yes, maybe they're not as top-heavy as the Big Ten. Maybe they don't have as much national championship contenders, but I think they have probably more playoff contenders. I mean, yes, I would say they have the most 12-team playoff contenders out of any conference. Tennessee's interesting, though. I don't see them beating Texas that early in the season. They're still having a QB battle. They don't really know who the starter will be, and I have a lot of question marks. Again, it's Tennessee. The offense will be pretty good, I'd assume. You got Braylon Staley at receiver. He's really solid. Deshaun Bishop at running back should be really good. But QB is obviously a big question mark. I question the defense a little bit as well. They've got some decent linebackers in there. But then again, I mean, with Tennessee, it really is hard to say how good this team will be this season. And you look at the schedule, it's not doing them any favors. Texas, home against Auburn. I think Auburn's going to be a tricky team this season. Bama coming to town. At Texas A&M, home against LSU. Honestly, all things considered, it's not a terrible SEC schedule. You avoid Georgia. You avoid Ole Miss. You avoid some of these top-tier teams. The problem is I just don't know how good I believe Tennessee will be as a team. So I'm giving them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt just because Josh Heupel, the offense, should be really good. But then again, man, I think there's a very real chance this team does struggle, especially early. Number 23 for me is going to be Missouri. Missouri's kind of getting some hate because they're always ranked, either 23, 24, 25 in the preseason poll, and they always finish there as well. It seems like this team just lives as the 20th to 25th best team in the country. But to be fair, I mean, that is about where they are every year. This is a really decent team every year. They're probably going to finish 9-3 or 8-4 again this season. You have Ahmad Hardy still. Obviously, hopefully he's fully healthy. I think it sounds like he's all right. Obviously, tragic what happened to him, but I think he's good to go. And if he is, he's arguably the best running back in the country. It's either him or Kewan Lacey. They do play at Ole Miss, so that'll be a fun matchup. Imagine both those guys just go for like 250 on the ground, and it's just an absolute, like, just breaking off runs, big runs left and right. That would be electric. At Kansas could be a little tricky. I don't know how good Kansas will be this year, but it's a rivalry game on the road. That could be tricky. Florida, I think, is going to be a really solid team. I considered ranking them in my top 25. Florida, A&M, Ole Miss, all back-to-back. And then on the back end, you got Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma. I mean, there's a chance this team does go like 6-6. I don't think that's crazy, but they probably will beat Florida at home. They probably will win one of these tough games, maybe even two. So you're probably looking at an 8-4, 9-3 season, yet again for Missouri. But I don't know. I mean, Austin Simmons comes over as the QB. He started over Trinidad Chambliss for a while at Ole Miss. Obviously, he wanted to succeed at Ole Miss, but now he's found a spot in Missouri, and I think he should be pretty good. The offensive line, especially Caden Green, left tackle, he's going to be one of the best NFL tackles here. I don't think he's eligible. I want to say he's not eligible for the draft this year, but I think next season he will be. So he's going to be a top tackle whenever he declares for the draft. And then you got Jamal Roberts to back up Ahmad Hardy. I mean, this backfield is really solid. Austin Simmons, those two backs, the offensive line. I think Missouri's going to be able to compete and hang with some of these top teams here in the SEC. I just don't know if they have the ceiling as some of the top contenders. Number 22 for me is going to be the Houston Cougars. With Houston, it's kind of hard to say how good they will be. I mean, they finished around this rank last year. I really do think Willie Fritz, though, is one of the better coaches in the country, in all honesty. I think Houston should have, all things considered, a pretty starting team, or a pretty good start to the season. That game against Texas Tech is gonna be tough. Yes, on the road that early, they probably do lose that game. But I think, all things considered, the Oklahoma State game is going to be hard at Kansas State, but they should start 4-1, 5-1 maybe, and then the back half of the. I mean, look at the last 4 weeks for them. Those should all be wins. They've got that stretch in the middle: Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Utah. 2 of those games being on the road. That's going to be a little bit tough for them. It is. But Connor Weigman, he has some starts under his belt. He played at Texas A&M for a while. Senior, I think he'll be able to win them a few of these games. They're probably going to finish 9-3, 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, probably in that range if I had to guess. I mean, there's potential they go 11-1. I think they probably do drop one of those games in the middle there. Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Utah, they probably drop one, maybe even two. But I don't really see a loss anywhere else besides Texas Tech on this schedule. I think it's very workable. So you're probably looking at 9-3, 10-2 for Houston, but I think it's a very solid team led by Connor Weigman. Number 21 is going to be Louisville. I really love Louisville this year. I think they're in for a really solid season. I really, really do. You look at Louisville, they're always a pretty decent team. And under Jeff Brom, again, it's kind of the same thing with Houston, Tennessee. I'm giving these teams down here the benefit of the doubt just because I love their coaches so much. And I think Louisville, I think they have the potential to maybe even win the ACC this year. Is that crazy to say? I think Miami's probably the lock of these top 3 teams. We'll get to the one I haven't mentioned in a little bit. Well, actually, I'll just tell you. Louisville, SMU, Miami, those are probably going to be the top 3 teams in the ACC. I don't really see that going any other way, in all honesty. I think Miami will probably be that top team pretty much all season, but Louisville, SMU will probably be competing with each other for that last spot to get into the ACC championship game, and even if they lose, I mean, look at Louisville's schedule after week 3. I don't see a loss for Louisville. Maybe they get a trap. Maybe they lose at Kentucky last week of the season. A little bit of a tricky spot there. Rivalry game on the road. You got Will Stein there as the head coach for Kentucky now. But outside of these top 3 weeks for Louisville, I mean, it's a very, very favorable schedule. They bring in Lincoln Keenholz from Ohio State. The question is, how good will he look? I think he'll be pretty solid. He's played against Ohio State players in practice his whole tenure there. And he's gotten on the field at times. Usually it's only in the short yardage situations, but I think, with him having that little X factor with his legs, I think that'll help him out a lot stepping into the starting spot. And he's got some pretty good guys surrounding him. Trey Richardson, receiver, he's going to be a very good target for him to throw to. Obviously, Isaac Brown in the backfield, that's going to help him out a lot. I mean, I think defensively as well, they've got some pretty good players. Clev Lubin, an edge player for them, he should be really good. So, I don't know. I think Louisville, there's a good chance if they beat Ole Miss week 1, which it's not technically at home, I think it's at a neutral site, but if they win that game, there's a chance Louisville goes 12-0, runs the table. Now, I think I could see them losing to Ole Miss, I could see them losing to SMU, but I think the floor here is probably 10-2, maybe it's 9-3 if they drop a game, but I don't know. I think it's going to be a very successful year here for Louisville. I really do, and I think they could beat SMU, especially because the fact they get it at home now, and honestly, I think Louisville is going to be playing its best football by the end of the season. I really, really do. I think Louisville's a dark horse playoff team. They could potentially get into the playoffs as like that 9 or 10 seed at 10-2, at 11-1 if they finish there. Maybe even 11-1 and then a loss to Miami in the conference championship game. Maybe they finish 11-2. I think there's a real chance they could be a playoff team this year. I really like Louisville as a team. Number 20 is going to be Iowa. Kind of the same thing. I mean, just some of these coaches and the track record. Iowa is always a great team. Kirk Ferentz, they're going to have one of the best defenses. They're going to have one of the best special teams groups in the country, in the Big Ten as well. I mean, this team is just consistent. They really, really are. And it's honestly, all things considered, not a terrible Big Ten schedule. You got on the road against Michigan, and then home against Ohio State, and then on the road against Washington, that 3-game stretch. But after that, I think these should all be wins. They should beat Iowa State pretty handily. I'm not too worried about that game. At Northwestern could be a little bit tricky, but they should beat Wisconsin. They should beat Purdue, should beat Nebraska, should beat Illinois, probably should beat Minnesota. You're probably looking at a floor of 8-4, maybe potentially a ceiling of 10-2. Is that crazy? I don't think so. I think Iowa defensively, they're going to be able to hang with a lot of people. And I think Ohio State, that's a potential upset spot. You welcome into Kinnick Stadium. It's a very hard place to play. The problem is you get Michigan, you get Washington on the road. If Washington had to come all the way to Iowa, travel that far, play in Kinnick, I honestly would take Iowa to win that game. The fact that they have to do the traveling, though, I don't know if I can fully get on board, but they could definitely shock me. I think you know what they say, defense travels. That could be in play. Same thing with the Michigan game, getting them early. Maybe Bryce Underwood's not fully settled in. He faces a tough defense like Iowa, and all of a sudden they're in a slugfest in the fourth quarter. I could see that happening. So Iowa should be a pretty good team here. I got them at number 20. Number 19 is going to be SMU. Honestly, you could just repeat everything I said about Louisville. I think SMU is going to be up there with Louisville for that second team in the ACC. That Week 3 game is just so critical, and the fact that Louisville gets it at home is so important. But SMU, they do have Notre Dame on the road. So, like I said, Louisville and SMU, very similar teams. Louisville gets Ole Miss and then SMU. SMU gets Louisville and Notre Dame. But besides that, Florida's probably 9-3, 10-2. For this SMU team. At Florida State, maybe that's a little tricky just because it's week 1, but I don't think Florida State will be that good this season. And you have Kevin Jennings coming back. I think he'll be able to handle that environment. He's a veteran quarterback. He's played a playoff game before for SMU, so I think they're going to be just fine. Ymir Knight is a name-to-know receiver for SMU. I think he'll have a very solid season. They've got some weapons offensively. They got a very nice O-line. And SMU just always plays good. It feels like they're always in the top 25. Rhett Lashley is one of the better coaches in the ACC. You could argue top 3 even. And yeah, I think, having at Notre Dame and at Louisville, both their toughest games are on the road. That is a little tricky, but the rest of their ACC schedule is just so light to me. It really is, and I think roster-wise, they do rank a little bit ahead of Louisville in terms of overall top to bottom. So maybe, there's a chance they could beat Louisville, and then all of a sudden, Notre Dame doesn't count as an ACC team, so there's a very real chance if they beat Louisville, they go undefeated in conference play in the ACC, finish 11-1, play Miami for that title game, and like I said, if you're 11-1 going into conference championship week, you probably have secured a playoff spot. So Louisville and SMU week 3, that game is so crucial, I think. So definitely tune into that when that does happen, and obviously we'll cover that in week 3 once leading up to that game. Washington's going to be my number 18 team here. We're going to start a little bit of a Big Ten run. I think Washington, there's obviously the top 3 in the Big Ten. I don't think that's, spoiling anything. Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, in any order you want, those are the top 3 teams in the Big Ten. But after that, you got teams like USC, Michigan, Penn State, Washington. All those teams are kind of the wild cards. I could see all of them getting into the playoffs. I could see all of them finishing 8-4, 9-3. It's kind of a big middle tier here in the Big Ten. You could even throw Iowa in that mix. We just talked about them. With Washington, yes, they do have a lot of a lot of talented players. The problem for me is Damon Williams tried to get out of his NIL deal. Then all of a sudden he's back now. He is a very good player. He's their best player, I would say. Leading them at QB, he's a very fun player to watch. The problem is, how does that impact the locker room, the chemistry on the team, the fact that he signed an big NIL contract, then tried to get out of it, tried to leave the team. Now they forced him back. Took some legal action. It's a whole big situation. Maybe early in the season that affects them, but you look at those first 4 weeks, they get them all at home. Those should all be wins. They should be 4-0 heading into the Coliseum to play USC. And it's a West Coast, game. That's like a typical, or a Pac-12 game for them when they both used to be in the Pac-12. And Washington, yes, maybe they have a tougher schedule than a team like Iowa. I mean, well, actually, those last 2 weeks, I don't see them winning either of those games, unfortunately. So that's probably going to be 2 losses for them. They probably do lose to USC on the road, but I think they could beat Iowa at home. They could beat Penn State at home for sure. Their ceiling is, honestly, probably 10-2, like just ceiling. Top they can go. Floor probably 8-4, 7-5 maybe. They got a big range of outcomes, but I think a lot of these middle tier teams in the Big Ten do. I could very well see all these middle tier teams just kind of cannibalizing each other. Like Washington beats Penn State, but Penn State beats Michigan, and then Michigan beats Iowa, but Iowa beats Washington. Like, I could see a whole scenario unfolding like that, where it's just a whole round robin cycle. But Washington, I am a little worried. They lose Denzel Boston, they lose Jonah Coleman. Those are big pieces for them to lose and try to get back from. I think they lost a little on defense as well. So maybe not as high on Washington as the rest, but I still have them at 18, which is kind of where everyone has to be ranking them. Just like roster-wise, I'm just very interested to see how the Damon Williams saga impacts this team. Number 17 for me is going to be Penn State. I am very interested to see how Matt Campbell fares in the Big Ten. I think he's a very solid coach. I really do. And I think this is very good for Penn State. Obviously, the James Franklin thing ran its course. They fired him in the middle of the season last year after starting out the season ranked like number 2 in the country, I want to say, and then finishing whatever they finished. What was it, 6-6, 7-5? Like, they were bad last season. Very disappointing. Matt Campbell comes in, brings over Rocco Becht, brings over a lot of the Iowa State guys. Iowa State kind of just left for dead. They have James People coming over from Ohio State. I think he's going to be a very good back, along with Carson Hansen. They've got a very good 1-2 punch here in the backfield, similar to Nick Singleton, Katron Allen from last season. But I think QB-wise, Rocco Becht, with Matt Campbell's system, Drew Aller wasn't awful. I mean, he obviously disappointed very much, but he also was dealing with injuries last season. Rocco Becht, I mean, QB play should be an upgrade. Coaching-wise, this is definitely an upgrade. And then defensively, it's gonna be a pretty solid. I mean, this is gonna be similar to an Iowa State Matt Campbell team just in the Big Ten. So how do you think that fares? I don't know. I think they have a little bit more talent here just because they're at Penn State now than they did at Iowa State. But the problem is that you also have a tougher schedule. So I think Penn State. The one thing with Penn State, you look at the schedule. This is probably the easiest schedule of any Big Ten team. I mean, look at the floor here. is just ridiculous. They avoid all three of the top three: Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana. They don't have to play any of them. You're really not going to see that with any of these other mid-tier Big Ten teams. You get USC at home, which is a huge advantage. You have to go on the road to Michigan. You have to go on the road to Washington. But even if you lose, even if you only win one of those three games, which I think is very possible for Penn State, I think they're very evenly matched with Michigan and Washington. The problem is they get them both on the road, and then I do think USC is a bit better than them. We'll talk about them in a bit. But I think Penn State probably does win one of those three games. I don't see them going 0-3 against their tougher opponents, just because I think the team's good enough to win one of those three. You're looking at a 10-2 Penn State team, or you're looking at a 10-2 Penn State team. Is that good enough? 10-2 out of the Big Ten. You got the name brand recognition with Penn State. Is that good enough to make the playoffs? I don't know, just because how weak the schedule is. You may have to go 11-1. Now, an 11-1 Penn State is a lock for the playoffs, but 10-2 with the schedule could get a little bit tricky. So we'll see with Penn State. I'm very interested to see how they look in the new Matt Campbell era. Number 16 is going to be Michigan. I think Michigan has the highest ceiling out of any of these. Actually, maybe USC. Besides USC, I think Michigan has the highest ceiling in the Big Ten of these middle tier teams. Obviously not the top three. They're kind of in their own tier. But with Michigan, you have Bryce Underwood here for another year. He's going to get another year of development, which I think is good for him. But I don't really buy into I don't think he's going to be some generational QB prospect. Maybe it's my Ohio State bias creeping in. I don't know what to really feel about Bryce Underwood. I don't think he's really all that good. I love Andrew Marsh as a receiver. I love Jordan Marshall running back there for them. And then obviously Savion Hyder is making a lot of buzz here in camp. He looks like he's going to be the next great Michigan running back. Offensive line-wise, they should be pretty solid. I worry about the D-line a little bit, but I think Michigan usually has a pretty good D-line. Linebacker-wise, I'm a little worried as well. But you got John Henry Daly coming off the edge. You got Rod Moore still there safety-wise. I think the DBs should be fine. So it's really just a question on how Bryce Underwood plays. If he plays to his potential, this Michigan team could be very dangerous. Running backs, you got a solid group. Andrew Marsh is really the guy at receiver. They don't really have much else, which maybe hurts Bryce Underwood. But, I mean, two great running backs behind him. That'll help him out a lot. And then defensively, I think they'll be decent. Maybe it's obviously not as good as some of the past Michigan defenses, like the 2023-22 team, or the 2022 team with Aiden Hutchinson. Actually, no, I think that was 2021. Or like the 2023 team when you had the ridiculous D-line where like all four of them got drafted. I don't think it'll be that good of a Michigan team, and with like Will Johnson as well. I mean, that Michigan defense was ridiculous. It's obviously not going to be that good, but I think they'll be serviceable. Definitely a step down, though, from past Michigan defenses, that's for sure. So I think that might hurt them. But if Bryce Underwood takes a step up, maybe that can offset a little bit. Schedule-wise, it's a really tough schedule. You play Oregon and Ohio State on the road. I don't think there's any chance they win either of those games. I don't think they beat Indiana at home. They could beat Penn State. They could beat Iowa. They could even beat Oklahoma, sure. So I think floor-wise, it's probably ceiling-wise, honestly, ceiling might be 9-3 for this team. This schedule is just, I do think Michigan's going to be a great team, but the schedule is, besides Ohio State, probably the toughest schedule in the country. I mean, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, and USC. Those are like the four toughest schedules in my eyes. I don't think Michigan's as good as any of those other three teams we've listed, so I think they're going to be hurt the most by this. I don't know if they beat Oklahoma. If I just had to pick right now, I'd pick Oklahoma. So I think ceiling is probably 9-3. Floor is probably 7-5. I mean, the schedule is so hard, and I don't think they have enough players. Now, the coaching staff upgrade is huge for them. Kyle Whittingham coming in, obviously replacing Sharon Moore after all his whole situation. That's huge for them. But I don't know how much they'll be able to do with this schedule. In all honesty, that's just my opinion. Alabama's going to come in at 15 for me. A lot of questions about Alabama. They weren't really able to run the ball last season. Has that changed? That's my question. I don't really know if it has. they didn't really bring in anything to impress me at running back. They did just recently name Keelan Russell as the starter, which I think is good. And I think secondary-wise, this is probably the best secondary in the country. I mean, it's ridiculous. I think Ryan Coleman-Williams will have a bounce-back season. I think offensive line-wise, they should be pretty good. D-line-wise, the defense for Alabama is going to be really good. They have a solid D-line. They have the best secondary, in my opinion, in the country. I think that's fair to say. Xavier Brown at corner, Bray Hubbard at safety, Keon Sabb at safety. There's a lot of names in this Bama secondary, and I think that's going to help them out a whole lot. I think the D-line is going to be pretty solid as well. Offensively, though, I do just have a lot of questions. Like, if Keelan Russell comes out and shows out, then this Alabama team could be dangerous. But I don't know if I'm ready to. I was never a big Ty Simpson guy, but Ty Simpson was playing his heart out last season for Alabama, and he couldn't really do much. They didn't really have a run game. You know, the receiver, Ryan Coleman-Williams, took a step back. They did have Jeremy Bernard, but now they lose him. Like, how much did this Alabama offense really change? That's my question. Schedule-wise, though, I do see them going 5-0 heading into that Georgia game. And then they have that stretch in the middle of the season. Georgia at Tennessee, home against A&M, at LSU. If they can split two of those four, which I think they will beat Tennessee. I think they probably beat A&M as well. And, you know, Alabama has historically owned Georgia, so I think ceiling-wise for this team, it's probably ceiling-wise it might be 11-1, maybe ceiling 10-2, floor probably 8-4, but I don't really see them going 8-4. If I had to predict, I would say 9-3, 10-2. I would lean towards 10-2 because I think the talent for Alabama is still very solid. This team could definitely be a playoff team, for sure, but there's a lot of question marks that I have with this team that I don't necessarily have with some of these other SEC teams up in this tier. Number 14 is going to be BYU. I'm very high on BYU this year. Kalani Sitake, there was a lot of rumblings that he might go ahead and go over to Penn State. Obviously, BYU gets him to stay, which is huge. You know, and I think Kalani Sitake is one of the best coaches in the country. I think that's fair to say. He is a phenomenal coach. They bring back Bear Bachmeier. I think another year under his belt, he should be better. He was a true freshman last year. He should be really good this season. I have a lot of expectations for BYU. They bring back L.J. Martin, who I believe won Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year last season. He's one of the best backs in the country. They bring back a lot of their guys in the secondary, which I think helps them out a lot. I think this BYU team should be pretty solid. All things considered, I think them and Texas Tech are still the two best teams, the teams to be in the Big 12, and BYU doesn't play Texas Tech on their schedule now. They do have a tough game against Notre Dame. They do have a road game against Utah, but noticeably, I don't have Utah in my top 25. I'm not sure how good Utah will look without Kyle Whittingham there, so I'm a little bit reserved on them. I think there's a very real chance the floor for this BYU team, just with the schedule, is 10-2. I don't see them beating Notre Dame, so I think the ceiling is probably 11-1. You're looking at BYU being 10-2 at 11-1. Is that good enough for them to get in the playoffs? At 10-2 with the schedule, I don't know. I'm not sure, but an out-of-conference loss to Notre Dame, maybe they go 10-2 and upset Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game, win the Big 12, then obviously they're going to get in. If they go 10-2 and don't win the Big 12, then they finish 10-3. That's an interesting. It's gonna depend on what happens around them. But if they go 11-1, they should be in the playoffs. So BYU, I see them going 10-2 or 11-1. If you're a BYU fan, you can let me know how you feel about that. But that's what I see for BYU. USC is going to come in at number 13. A lot of people are very high on USC this year, and I think for good reason. You look at this offense; it should be one of the best offenses in the country. It really should be. Jada Mayava comes back for USC. Lincoln Riley. If there's any year for them to compete for a top spot, it'll be this season. I think USC could shock some people. I think that the fact that they get Oregon and Ohio State at home in the Coliseum, I think there's a very real chance they upset one of those two teams. I could see it. I really could. I'm looking at that Ohio State game. And that pains me to say it as an Ohio State fan. I think there's a very real chance USC upsets Ohio State at home with the far travel. Lincoln Riley's a great coach. He's beaten Ohio State before when he was back at Oklahoma, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. USC also brings back Wayman Jordan at running back. He's one of the best backs in the country. They also have King Miller, little 1-2 punch there. They were great last season. Jada Mayava was great last season. This should be one of the better offenses in the country. You got Terrell Anderson at receiver. He should be really good as well. And then defensively, I think the D-line is great. I think the offensive line is great. Jontez Williams at corner is a really good player for them. There's a lot of things I like about USC. Now, the problem is the schedule is so tough. Home against Oregon, home against Washington, at Penn State, and then you get a little break with Wisconsin, but then you got Ohio State and then at Indiana. I mean, those 6 weeks, that's going to define USC's season. I think the other 6 games on their schedules will be wins. The only reason I'm even including that Wisconsin game is it's a road game. Wisconsin's a tough place to play, and you have Ohio State and Indiana the following 2 weeks. Maybe that's a trap game. Maybe, I mean, there's a chance USC is just broken. After Oregon, after Washington, on the road against Penn State, they could lose 2 of those games. All of a sudden, they're 5-2, and you still have Ohio State and Indiana on the schedule. I mean, USC has a very tough schedule, but like I said, I think there's a good chance they could beat Oregon or Ohio State. Honestly, I'm just going to give them 1 win out of those 2 games. I really think that could be the case. I'll give them the Washington win. They could beat Penn State too. I don't think they beat Indiana on the road, but I think there's a ceiling-wise, I think USC probably ceiling is 10-2 for this team. Floor, though, you're probably looking at an 8-4 floor. As much as it pains me to say it, but I'll say it once, I'll say it again. Lincoln Riley, if there's ever a time to compete with USC, it's this year. It's got to be this year. We've been waiting for it. Lincoln Riley back in the playoffs, so would it be amazing? It's got to be this season for USC. Now, USC, typically we do score predictions. We haven't so far, but USC actually is the only team in my top 25 to play Week 0, so we're going to have a score prediction here for their Week 0 game against San Jose State. I think they blow them out. I mean, it's San Jose State. I got 48-10. That's just my. Maybe USC scores even more than this. Maybe they don't even give up points. But I think San Jose State should be able to score a little bit. They're in the Mountain West. Nonetheless, USC, they should win this game very easily. Number 12 is going to be Texas A&M. You may think this is a little low for A&M, but I'll make my case for why. First of all, I'm trying not to have the schedule play into it a lot, just because, I mean, if I'm doing this based off of like regular or final season records, like that doesn't seem really fair. So I'm trying to judge this based off the current roster. But take a look at the schedule: at LSU, at Missouri, at Alabama. You got Tennessee, at Oklahoma, and then home against Texas. And that's 6 games right there that they could very well lose. I don't think they'll lose all 6, but floor-wise, you're probably looking at 7-5 for this team. And then even ceiling-wise, I don't think they beat Alabama or LSU on the road. I don't think they beat Texas. Well, you got LSU, Alabama, and Oklahoma all on the road. There's a chance they could win one of those games. I mean, I guess they could win all 3. I mean, they're close with LSU. They're close with Oklahoma. They're close with Alabama. But even still, I mean, I don't think they beat Texas. I mean, ceiling-wise, it's probably 10-2, 9-3 for this team. Floor is probably like 7-5. But all things considered, I mean, let's take a look at the roster. Obviously, Marcel Reed comes back in. I'm not as bought in as some other people are with him. I don't really know how much I believe in Marcel Reed as a quarterback. I think he's very good with his legs, but as a passer, I don't know. You lose a lot of the offensive line. You lose Casey Concepcion from last year. He was a huge part of this offense. I mean, a lot of last season was just throwing deep balls to Concepcion, to Mario Craver. Mario Craver is back, but he's kind of the only guy I trust in this offense. Ruben Owens, he's a solid halfback. He should be all right, but I don't know. I'm not fully bought into this A&M team. They had one of the best D-lines in the country last year, but you lose Cassius Howell, you lose some other guys. You lost a lot defensively. You lost a lot offensively. A lot of your weapons. I think defensively they'll be able to replace a little bit, but offensively I'm very worried for A&M. So I got them coming in at number 12. I'm not fully bought into them. LSU is going to be my number 11 team. Same thing. I think roster-wise, you could argue LSU's top 7, 8 roster in the country in terms of talent, but I need to see it all mesh first. I think Lane Kiffin's getting a little bit too much of a bump in terms of coaching. I was never fully ready to say he was like an elite tier coach at Ole Miss, and now that he's at LSU, it feels like everyone's just because he got the big paycheck. Now everyone seems to think of him as a top tier coach in the sport. He's probably in tier 2, but he's not in the tier 1 with guys like Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, Kurt Cignetti, Dan Lanning, Marcus Freeman, guys like that. I mean, I don't think he's up there quite yet. Now, if he starts to succeed with LSU, then maybe I have to change that. And I think offensively, LSU has the potential to be the number 1 offense in the country. Sam Levitt coming in. Trey Green at tight end should be phenomenal. Jordan Seaton at left tackle. He's going to be probably the best left tackle in the country this season. Receiver-wise, Jackson Harris, Jace Brown. I think running back-wise, they have enough depth there. Same thing with receiver. I mean, it's LSU. They're going to have so much depth all over the roster. Defensively, they bring back Whit Weeks at linebacker. He's kind of their leader, and I love that they brought him back. I think that's going to help him out a lot. I think LSU has the potential to be phenomenal this season. Clemson should be a win. I don't think Clemson's going to be very good. At Ole Miss, I really could see Ole Miss winning that game just because they're going to be so motivated to win. I do think Ole Miss wins that game, but I think LSU beats A&M. Then you have Bama, Texas back-to-back. They probably do lose one of those games. You're probably looking at honestly, I mean, well, it's a tough schedule. Ceiling is probably 11-1 or 10-2. Floor probably 9-3, 8-4. Like, I think this team will be either a playoff team or right there for a playoff spot. In all honesty, floor's probably 9-3, in my opinion. 9-3, 10-2, 11-1. That's kind of the range I see him going in. That will be right there, if not in the playoffs. I think LSU will be a playoff team this season. Number 10 is going to be Ole Miss. They have that tough game to open up against Louisville at the neutral site. We'll see how that goes. I think they should win. I think they should have enough. But I will say, this is the best backfield in the country. Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacey as the QB running back duo, that's going to just win them games alone. In all honesty, it is. I think the D-line for this Ole Miss team is very solid. I think defensively this team should actually be very good. I worry about the receivers a little bit, but Deuce Alexander, Jonte Cook, they've got some names there. This Ole Miss team has a lot of talent. I think Ole Miss has a huge range of outcomes because I think Ole Miss, they were kind of just, they were motivated so much last season. I don't know how much I'm bought in with Pete Golding. I think the defense will be pretty good, and I think Trinidad Chambliss will be able to do enough offensively where even if the offense struggles, the pieces around him, I don't see Chambliss or Kewan Lacey struggling, and I think those two will be able to win them some games offensively alone. I think Ole Miss will be able to win games a lot of different ways. I really do. I think Ole Miss has the potential to be much higher than number 10. I think they have the potential to be much lower than number 10 as well. But schedule-wise, maybe the toughest schedule in the SEC, maybe. You got Louisville in the non-conference. You got LSU coming to town. At Florida, I think they probably do lose that game. I think Florida's a really good team. Missouri should be a win, but Missouri's a little tricky. At Texas, at Oklahoma, home against Georgia. I mean, they probably lose at Texas. They probably lose against Georgia. Honestly, I mean, they could beat Oklahoma. They could beat Oklahoma. I think ceiling on this team probably 10-2, but floor is probably 7-5. I mean, I think there's a big range of outcomes for this Ole Miss team. I think if they are going to be a playoff team, they'll be kind of sneaking in there at the end. So Ole Miss, they're going to be a fun team to watch, though. If there's any team to watch Trinidad Chambliss. I think he's maybe the best quarterback in the country. I mean, Dante Moore's up there, Julian Sand, CJ Carr, even Arch Manning. There's a lot of names. Trinidad Chambliss is going to be one of those top guys, though, for sure. I could see him competing for the Heisman, just depending on how good Ole Miss is. And same thing with Kewan Lacey. He could be up there for the Heisman as well if he just has a monster season, which I think is definitely in the range of outcomes. I think he's probably the best running back in the country, him or Ahmad Hardy. So we'll see with Ole Miss, but they're my number 10 team. Number 9 is going to be Texas Tech for me. Obviously, the Brendan Sorsby thing kind of clouding a lot of Texas Tech right now. But you look at Will Hammond, I think he's going to be all right. he played a bit last season when Baron Morton was hurt. Looked pretty solid. He stepped in at times for them. He's been able to win them some games. And roster-wise, they reloaded very well. The defense still should be one of the best, top 5 probably, defense in the country. Just the money they invest into this roster every season now. Texas Tech is going to be one of those teams. They're once again kind of just the runaway favorites for me in the Big 12. Cameron Dickey at running back should be really solid. They've got some guys receiving-wise, Coy Eakin, Kenny Johnson. They've got a lot of depth everywhere, and that's what NIL money will get you. They have a very deep team, especially defensively. D-line's going to be great. Bryce Pollock at corner is a name to know. He's really solid. Terrence Carter Jr. at tight end, he'll be really good. So I think Texas Tech is going to be just fine. I think they're going to be right back to where they were last season. One of the best teams, by far and away, the best roster in the Big 12 for me. I think Texas Tech's ceiling is probably 12-0. And I think floor might even be like 11-1. Like, I don't see a world where this team doesn't make the playoffs. I think this is them or Notre Dame's probably the biggest lock to make the playoffs. I mean, look at the schedule. Where's the loss? I think they go 12-0. I really do. I mean, maybe you could argue a mix of Houston, maybe Arizona even, at Oklahoma State. Those 3 games, probably their 3 toughest games. You could argue maybe they slip up, maybe they get injured, lose one of those games, but honestly, I don't see a loss here. I think they probably do go 12-0. Texas Tech's going to be my number 9 team, by far and away the best team in the Big 12. Oklahoma is going to come in at number 8. I'm just going to give a slight edge to these teams that are playing in tougher conferences in my rankings, at least preseason-wise. But if Texas Tech comes out and just runs through the Big 12 like they did last season, no doubt in my mind they'll finish as a top 5 team. If they play how they did last season, they were ranked, what were they ranked? 4th in the playoff rankings. They were undefeated last season. Like, they're going to be up there if they play like they did last season, no doubt about it. Oklahoma's got a pretty tough schedule, but I think John Mateer, let's not forget, before he got injured last season, he was the favorite for Heisman. I know it was early in the season, but he is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think defensively, with Brent Venables still there calling the defense, this is going to be one of the best defenses, one of the best D-lines in the country once again. David Stone at D-tackle, he is ridiculous. Eli Bowen at corner, he's going to be really good. Isaiah Satanga, John Mateer's going to be, he's going to be his number 1 target. I mean, this defense for Oklahoma is them, Texas Tech, Indiana. Those are Notre Dame too. Those are going to be some of the top defenses. Probably the top 4 defenses. Maybe Oregon you could throw in there. That's probably the top 5. There's a lot of good defenses in college football this season, but Oklahoma's going to have one of them. Brent Venables is a great defensive mind. I think John Mateer is going to be able to do enough offensively with Isaiah Satanga there. Trell Harris as well is a really solid receiver. They've got a lot of weapons for him to utilize. John Mateer is obviously a threat with his legs as well. I mean, I'm so excited to watch Oklahoma play this season. I think their schedule is pretty workable. You get Texas at home. At Michigan will be tough. At Georgia will be tough. At Florida will even be tough. Ole Miss, Texas A&M, both at home. I think they beat Texas A&M. They probably do beat Ole Miss at home, if I had to guess. I think they could beat Texas at home, too. Maybe I'm too high on Oklahoma. I think, well, it is a tough schedule. You still have Michigan, Georgia, Florida, all on the road. I mean, I think ceiling is probably 10-2 just because of how the schedule. A lot of these road games could be tricky. Floor probably 8-4, but I don't know. I think Oklahoma could be one of those teams where they get into the playoffs as an 8, 9, 10 seed, and you just do not want to play them. Similar to how Miami got hot last season with their elite lines of scrimmage, I think Oklahoma could be similar to that this season, led by elite quarterback in John Mateer. Oklahoma's going to be my number 8 team. Number 7, this is definitely a tier gap here. These top 7 teams, I would bet a lot of money that the national champion this season comes from one of these top 7. Could Oklahoma win it all? Maybe. But honestly, I mean, I really think it's one of these top 7 teams. Maybe if everything goes right for like an Ole Miss or an LSU, but honestly, I don't even know if I can say that. I think the national champion is almost guaranteed to come from one of these top 7. Now, it really could come from any of these top 7. We're going to start off with Miami, though. I think they're the lowest of this group. They lost a lot. Defensive line-wise, they had 2 first-round picks, and I think they lost a lot. They lost 3 of their offensive line starters, both of their tackles. They lose Carson Beck. Now, they did bring in Darian Mensah, who I think will be an upgrade from Carson Beck. I'm going to say that right now. I think Mensah is a better quarterback than Carson Beck was. Mensah has experience. He was at Duke. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks, and I could very well see him competing for Heisman. The other thing with Miami, they bring back Malachi Toney, who is wide receiver 2 in the country, only behind Jeremiah Smith, who is going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL in 2 years. He's that good. So Malachi Toney gets that title. Mark Fletcher comes back, running back for them. He tore it up in the playoffs last season. He's going to be back. The only thing I worry about is the lines of scrimmage, because that is so much of what Miami relies upon. They are so built in the trenches last season. Mario Cristobal wants to win that way. I don't know if he'll have the immense amount of talent. Well, he's not going to have that amount of talent, that amount of push up front, and pressure on the opposing quarterbacks as he did last season. I don't think he will. I think they're going to struggle, especially early in that department. Now, you look at Miami's schedule, besides the Notre Dame game, it's probably going to be all wins. Maybe they drop one of these other games. Floor's probably 10-2. Ceiling's 12-0 for this team. Miami could very well go undefeated. They have the potential to do so, but I kind of want to wait and see how the offensive line, defensive line looks, just because they'd lost so much, and that is their philosophy. You got to win in the trenches if you want to play at Miami. Now, maybe Mario Cristobal just knows how to coach that, and they'll be just fine, but as of right now, I want to wait and see a little bit on Miami, so they're going to be my number 7 team of these top 7 that I think can win the title. Number 6 is going to be Georgia, and I hate this. I hate this so much that I have Georgia at 6. I know it's going to age bad. I think Georgia schedule. Look at the schedule, by the way. An SEC schedule, you get Oklahoma at home, you get Florida, Missouri at home, Auburn at home, maybe some of those tricky mid-tier SEC teams. They get them all at home. You go on the road to Alabama and on the road to Ole Miss. That's really, you have only 3 ranked teams on the schedule. I guess Missouri as well, but 3 top 15 teams. Georgia's not losing all 3 of those games, even though 2 of them are on the road. I think Georgia probably does beat Oklahoma at home. I think Georgia probably does beat Ole Miss. And I think there's a chance they beat Alabama as well. Georgia ceiling-wise could go 12-0. Floor, probably 10-2, 11-1. Georgia, I think, if I had to pick anyone to win the SEC, I would pick Georgia just because of how favorable the schedule is. I have Texas ranked ahead of them, but the schedule is much more challenging than Georgia's. Georgia's going to be in the SEC championship game, and we know it's in Atlanta, so they're going to have the home advantage anyways. I think Georgia has a very real chance to run the table, go 12-0, win the SEC, go 13-0, and potentially even get the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Now, with the schedule, would it be the Big Ten champ if they're undefeated? Yes. Obviously, even if the Big Champ, or if Notre Dame's undefeated, do they rank ahead of Georgia? Maybe. But Georgia's going to be a playoff team. I have no doubt about it in my mind. I love Gunnar Stockton. I love a lot of what they brought back defensively, especially in the secondary. I think Ellis Robinson's going to be one of the best cornerbacks in the country this season. I think D-line, offensive line, maybe they have the best offensive line in the country. I think Georgia's going to be just fine. I do worry about receiver a little bit for them. That's definitely their weak point offensively, because I really do think that Georgia, offensive line-wise, they're going to be able to run the ball. They have Nate Frazier there. Gunnar Stockton is a problem with his legs as well. And tight end, they have a really solid tight end group. But Gunnar Stockton, he always shows up in the big moments. If Georgia's in a close game with Alabama, Ole Miss late, Oklahoma late, he's going to be able to win them some of these close games. I think Georgia, if I had to pick a team to win the SEC, it would be them. But roster-wise, talent-wise, I think they're a step behind this top 5. And I actually had Georgia sitting at 4 in my rankings for the longest time. And right before I hit record, I jumped 2 teams ahead of them. One of those teams is my number 5 team, Indiana. You look at Indiana. I hate having Indiana at 5 too. I mean, there's a chance Georgia and Indiana finish 1-2 by the end of the season in the college football playoff rankings just because of the schedule. Look at the schedule. You get Ohio State at home. You get USC at home. Yes, you got to go on the road to Michigan. Yes, you got to go on the road to Washington. But I think Indiana's levels ahead of both those teams. I mean, floor probably 11-1 for this team. Maybe you could convince me 10-2, but ceiling 12-0. Indiana could very well go 12-0 in the regular season again. Now, do they win the Big Ten? I'm gonna say no. There's a team, we'll talk about them in a little bit, I think will win the Big Ten, so I'm not going to say like Georgia, I think will win the SEC, even though I have one SEC team ranked ahead of them. I think roster-wise, Indiana will be just fine. Yes, they did lose a lot of their players. They lost Fernando Mendoza, their leader. They lost Kalen Black, running back. But they bring back Charlie Becker. They bring in Marsh, the receiver transfer from Michigan State. They're going to be just fine offensively. Josh Hoover, I know a lot of people are kind of worried Mendoza's gone. Guess what? Curtis Rourke came in. He was great. Mendoza came in. He was better. Josh Hoover, you look at all three of those QBs, Curtis Rourke, Mendoza, Josh Hoover, before they got to Indiana, Josh Hoover was the best one. Mendoza at Cal was not as good as Josh Hoover was at TCU. He just wasn't. Josh Hoover was better last season than Mendoza was at Cal. Obviously, Mendoza last season was better than Josh Hoover, but nobody's questioning that. He won the Heisman. Defensively, this Indiana defense should be one of the best in the country. Yes, they did lose a lot of their core JMU guys that Kurt Cignetti brought in, but I have no doubt in my mind he'll be just fine. I don't think Indiana's going anywhere. Indiana, like I said, could arguably finish 12-0, win the Big Ten regular season, but I don't think they win the Big Ten championship. And I don't think Ohio State does either. I have Ohio State coming in at 4, and you look at Ohio State, maybe I'm a biased Ohio State fan, but this is the hardest schedule in the country. I think there's a very real chance Ohio State finishes 10-2. I think that's probably their floor. I've seen a lot of people saying they're going to go 9-3. I don't think so. I think they're a good enough team to finish 10-2. But you got on the road against Texas, week 2. Tricky game. On the road against Iowa, that's going to be tough. On the road against Indiana. On the road against USC. That's four of their 6 tough opponents on the road. Back at the half of the schedule, you welcome Oregon, you welcome Michigan in the last week. I do think they beat Michigan. I think Ryan Day solved his Michigan demons. I don't trust Kyle Whittingham. I don't think he's quite ready for the level of intensity. Yes, Utah did play with intensity, but not at this level. Ohio State, Michigan, it's different. I think Ohio State beats Michigan. I don't think there's really any chance they lose that game this season. I think they will beat Oregon because I think Ohio State just has something is there. Ryan Day over Dan Lanning. I know Oregon beat Ohio State 2 years ago, but that was in Autzen. Then in the Rose Bowl, Ohio State came back, won that game. I think Ohio State will beat Oregon. I don't trust Oregon to travel that far and win a game in the shoe in Columbus that late into the season. At Indiana, that's going to be tough. I think Texas beats Ohio State week 2. I'll say that right now. I think Ohio State will beat Iowa, but it will be close. I think Indiana and USC, one of those games will be a loss for Ohio State. So I think floor is probably 10-2. Ceiling, I mean, we've gotten to the point where ceiling is 12-0. I mean, this is one of the best rosters in the country. You bring back Jeremiah Smith. You bring in Chris Henry Jr. He's another 5-star receiver, the number 1 receiver. I'm interested to see how good he'll look next to Jeremiah Smith with Julian Sand throwing him the ball. You bring back Brandon Innis at receiver. Yes, the O-line is still a question mark, but you brought back a lot of the guys last season. I know they weren't great last year, but another year under their belt, they should be all right. I'm a little worried, but they should be all right. Running back-wise, you got Bo Jackson back. Legend Bake coming in. He's making a lot of noise in camp. He should be a pretty fundamental piece for our run game. The problem is defensively, they're not going to be as good of a defense as they were last season. You lose Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles as his 2 linebackers. That's the group I'm worried about. Linebacker. I think D-line, they'll be fine. Houston, off the edge. Edric Houston, I think he'll be a really good player for us. I think D-tackle-wise, obviously, D-tackle, they did lose Caden McDonald to the draft, but you bring back Kenyatta Jackson. I think he'll be really good. Secondary-wise, you did lose Caleb Downs, but you bring back Jalen McClain at safety. Jermaine Matthews comes back. Devin Sanchez, I think, will be really good this season. I think he's going to step into the role perfectly for them. Bo Atkinson is back. I'm not worried about and obviously losing Caleb Downs sucks, but you brought back You brought in Earl Little to kind of solve that at safety. You brought in another safety as well. Two safeties coming in. One of them will be able to be serviceable back there, I think. I worry about the linebackers, though. Losing Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, those were two top 10 picks last season. Like, those are two elite guys. Terry Moore was the safety I forgot to mention. I think offensive line worries me a little bit. I think the linebackers worry me a little bit. Everywhere else, Ohio State will be just fine. But the schedule as well, having this tough of a schedule, it's going to be very tough. Ohio State comes in at number 4 for me. Number 3 is going to be Texas. And obviously, I'm an Ohio State fan. I'd love to rank them number 1 like the coaches poll, like the AP poll. But I just can't get there with this roster quite yet. Texas is going to be number 3 for me. Top to bottom, I think Texas is the number 2 roster in this in the country right now. I really do. I think Arch Manning played phenomenal last season. I don't care what the haters will say. The second half, Arch was great. They didn't have a run game to support him. They didn't really have the receivers, honestly, to support him either. He didn't have a lot of weapons. But with Texas, you have Arch Manning, who's arguably the best QB in the country this season. You bring in Hollywood Smothers to be the running back for this team. He was phenomenal. You bring in Raleek Brown, 2 running back transfers. One of them is going to be great. Both of them were great last season. One of them will be good. You bring in Cam Coleman, who's one of the best receivers in the country, from Auburn. Trevor Gooseby, I believe he did get hurt, but he's one of the best left tackles in the country. He's going to be a top pick in the NFL draft. Colin Simmons comes back off the edge. He's arguably the best edge rusher in the country. This roster, top to bottom, I think there's only one roster that is better than them. I'm saving that. I think Texas roster-wise is number 2, but the schedule is just so hard. It's so hard. I think they beat Ohio State. Oklahoma will be tough. I think they beat Tennessee. I think they beat Florida. I think they beat Ole Miss. A&M could be tricky there. Same thing with LSU. I think floor probably 10-2. I think ceiling 12-0. I think this team is going to be phenomenal. The only thing I worry about for Texas is I can't rank them ahead of these top 2 teams. And maybe you could argue the same thing, but Steve Sarkisian has still yet to show me that he's capable of winning the big games. Georgia owns him. Ohio State owns him, but I think they will I think Sarkisian will beat Ohio State this season. That's a little worrisome. But you could say that for the team I have number 1. I think it's fair. Number 2 is going to be Notre Dame. I think there's no chance. Notre Dame has 2 hard games. Oh, well, 3. If you want to throw SMU in there, but I think Notre Dame beats SMU at home. I'm not too worried there. At BYU and home against Miami, I really think Notre Dame beats both those teams, though. I think ceiling's 12-0, floor's probably 11-1. Like, Notre Dame is phenomenal. Yes, they lost Jadarian Price. Yes, they lost Jeremiah Love, top 3 pick in the NFL draft. 2 first-round picks in the backfield. But I do think Notre Dame will be able to fill the void a little bit. Obviously, the thing with Notre Dame is we're going to see this season we're going to see how much of the 2 running backs last season carried the offensive load. But I think C.J. Carr is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. You bring in some guys from Ohio State to be your top 2 receivers. That's always a good idea in my opinion. Ohio State just knows how to get receivers. And I think both those guys will be really good. C.J. Carr is going to have a lot of weapons. Jaden Greathouse should be. He was great last season. I don't see why he wouldn't be great this year. I think Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter, those are the 2 Ohio State guys. I think both of them will be really good for them. Leonard Moore's probably the best corner in the country. I think you could argue Notre Dame has the best O-line in the country. I think you could argue Notre Dame has the best defense in the country. C.J. Carr's one of the best quarterbacks. I think the receiving room is great. The only thing I worry about is the running backs, but this is such an easy schedule. I think Notre Dame is a lock to get into the playoffs. But number 1 is going to be Oregon, and I think top to bottom they have the best roster as of right now. You could argue Dante Moore's the best quarterback in the country. I think if he declared for the NFL draft, he would have been a top 5 pick last season. Now he's probably going to be the number 1 pick going into next season. Defensive line-wise, the best defensive line by far. Amari Washington would have been an NFL draft pick. Mateo Iungale, I believe is how you say his name, he would have been an NFL draft pick. They've got some more guys as well. Bear Alexander probably would have been drafted as well. Jamari Johnson, I think, is the best tight end in the country. You bring back DeCorian Moore, who's only going to get better. You bring back Evan Stewart, who's only going to get better, fully healthy now. Running back-wise, Jordan Davison, De'Aaron Hill Jr. should be a really solid one, too. You even have Dylan Raiola. God forbid if anything happened to Dante Moore. I know that's probably not what I should be talking about, but they have him. They bring in Coy Parrish. Great player from Minnesota. He is one of the best safeties in the country. Brandon Finney Jr. is a great corner. There's just no holes on this team. Offensive line-wise, they're going to be great. They have the best defensive line by far, in my opinion, in the country. And we saw how important a good defensive line is. Last season, Indiana and Miami were probably the top two defensive lines in the country, and they were the top two, the final two teams left playing in the national championship game. Oregon, ceiling-wise, 12-0. Floor, it's a pretty favorable schedule. They don't have to play Indiana. At USC could be tough, so maybe the floor's 10-2, but you get Michigan at home. Sorry about that. You get Michigan at home. At Ohio State probably will be a loss. You get Michigan at home. You get Washington at home, though. I think floor honestly might be 11-1 for this team. I think Oregon's that good. I don't see Oregon losing 2 games on the schedule. Maybe if they lose in the Big Ten championship game, but Oregon would be my pick to win the Big Ten. I think they'll probably play Indiana just because Ohio State's schedule is so tough. I think Oregon probably finished 11-1 in the regular season. Indiana's probably 12-0, but I think Oregon wins the Big Ten. I think Oregon wins the Big Ten. Georgia wins the SEC. Miami wins the ACC. Texas Tech wins the Big 12. I know those are probably all the favorites, but that's just what I think is going to happen. I think Texas is a better team than Georgia. Playoff-wise, Texas is probably going to get farther than Georgia, in my opinion. I mean, you could argue a lot of things, but I think those are the 4 Power 4 conference champions. I think Oregon's my number 1 team. I think they have the best roster, top to bottom, just so stacked. I got to have Oregon at 1. Yeah, I think Dan Lanning, you could argue he hasn't won the big games yet, but he's gotten farther and farther. Every season he's gotten a little bit better, and I think this could be the season he gets over the hump and wins the national championship. I will say, it's very hard for me to predict because I'll say Oregon and Texas, I think, have the 2 best rosters, but neither of their coaches have proven that they can win a national championship game. Marcus Freeman has got there, but I don't know if I trust Notre Dame to win the national championship just because I don't think they'll be tested enough. I think the boring pick, I've seen everybody doing it, Oregon would be my official pick to win the national championship game. I don't think Indiana repeats. I don't think Ohio State will win this season. I think it's going to be Oregon or Texas. And neither of those coaches have proven it yet. So it's maybe a little tough to say that, but I think Oregon would be my pick right now. If I had to pick another team to win it all, it would be Texas, but I think I trust Oregon a little bit more. So Oregon is going to be my pick to win the national championship. You got my conference predictions. Talked a bit about all 25 teams. It's a long video, but it's our first college football video of the season. We had to dive deep into some of these teams, but that's going to do it for the Week 1 / preseason top 25 college football rankings. Like I said at the beginning, we're going to have these videos every single Tuesday, every single week, except next week, covering, updating what happened the previous week, how that changed the rankings, and then predicting every game in the following week. So that's going to do it. Conclude our preseason top 25 college football rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you go down there, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, turn on the noties. Obviously, college football content is going to start up weekly. We do NFL content weekly, college basketball content weekly, NBA weekly. We're doing MLB still, NFL content right around the corner. MLB, the playoffs are right around the corner. And then obviously after that basketball season, we'll get to that when we get to that. So subscribe if any of that interests you. And with all that being said, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. And I will see you guys next time with probably another MLB video if I had to guess. So yeah, stay tuned for that one.